Welcome to PixMix. My name is Arun.
My name is Patricia.
And my goodness, are we up for a very fun one today? So, this is going to be the first time when we actually finally cover a Pixar TV series. Now, some of you are going to probably point out Buzz Lightyear, a Star Command, but we only covered the movie, so we didn't actually cover, the whole TV show. So, but this is going to be, probably the first time that Pixar actually attempted to do, a whole TV series in their 3D animation.
Yeah, because as you guys know, Buzz Lightyear of Star Command was 2D, kind of reflecting on classic Saturday morning cartoons that you would tune into around the 80s and 90s where, hey, you have this cartoon that's based on a toy and now we're going to have a TV series on this. But no, this time we're going to be talking about their first animated series in 20 years that is utilizing their 3D animation style and is actually a continuation of one of their movies.
Okay, so Patricia, shall we punch in our clock and shall we see what's going on at work?
Absolutely. Let's take a look into this.
Here we go. So Monsters at Work is an American computer-animated streaming television series as it serves as the midquel of the 2001 film Monsters, Inc. that aired 20 years ago, and is part of the Monsters, Inc. media franchise. It debuted on the streaming services Disney Plus on the 7th of July of 2021 and is currently got a second season in development. So the premise sets the day at Henry P. Waternoose III's arrest at Monsters Incorporated, and finally the factory is in the hands of Mike and Sulley. Coming in is a young Tylor Tuskman, who has recently become a scared graduate at Monsters University, the same place that we found in that prequel, Monsters University. So he finally makes his way to Monsters Incorporated, only to find that they're no longer hiring scarers anymore, and they're hiring jokesters. As a result, Tylor is then relegated down into the basement with the so-called MIFTers, a bunch of misfits that basically do all the technical work behind the scenes at Monsters Incorporated, fixing the doors, fixing the cylinders, and doing all the other in-between jobs as well. So Tylor Tuskman has to work his way up from the MIFT group and trying to make his way into the Jokesters by taking comedy classes with Mike Wazowski during his lunch break. So, I just describing that, I mean, you would say that's a great setup. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And from what we saw in the first episode, it's actually a really, really unique premise. So it focuses on a particular monster who had gone all the way from 4 years of Monsters University and becoming a top scarer, even rivaling Sulley when he was first starting out, as we saw from Monsters University, the movie. And so he was really excited about going to doing his dream job, becoming a scarer at Monsters University. And we saw this with Mr. Waternoose sending over the letter saying that he has been accepted into this position, only to find out that Mr. Waternoose was arrested because of all the things that he did in Monsters, Inc. by trying to kidnap children so that he can be able to power up Monsters, Inc. because they were going through a major power scare. And so then when he finally arrived, it is literally a day after the events of Monsters, Inc. when Mike and Sulley are now the CEOs of Monsters, Inc. and now they're using laugh power as opposed to scream power.
I believe in the UK it's called Sod's Law. That basically happens to Tylor Tuskman. So.
Oh.
Yeah, but anyway, putting that aside. So you look at the whole setup of all of this, and you think, yeah, this is a great way to go. I mean, you've got a young scarer who's coming in and finds out that the whole thing has drastically changed, and that his whole industry he's having to now constantly learn. And by the way, as somebody who currently works with computers at the moment as his day job, I have to say I do sympathize with Tylor in a way, because the industry that I left when I left university after I did computer engineering, is a lot different now from where it was, many years ago. And now I do admit it didn't change automatically the minute that I left the university, but in a way, it is somewhat reflective of the world of work. It's nothing compared to what you actually learn when you're actually in academia. So.
Absolutely. And also, going through like similar situations with us where when we graduated from college, we graduated like around the time of the Great Recession in 2008, when there was just a massive crash in employment. And when I first went over to apply for many jobs, they said that I was underqualified or they weren't exactly looking for my particular position that I had spent 4 years doing. And so, for the most part, I either was working in very odd jobs, doing things that I wasn't even going to school for, or I was at the unemployment line until eventually I worked at this dead end job for 5 years. And then eventually I decided, you know what, I just needed to go back to school and do things that I wanted to do in the first place. So I definitely relate to Tylor a lot, in which he spent 4 years and who knows how many thousands of dollars in debt that he is so that he can be able to accomplish his dream job, only to find out that his dream job has become pretty much irrelevant. And the fact that he is working at this job that, by the way, we do meet up with a few other characters in this series, and one of them is his acquaintance from college known as Val. And she and Tylor, they took the same class together, and she dropped off in the first year. And she is currently working as a MIFTer. And then she was making a joke saying, wow, you spent 4 years of college going into the same position that I'm currently working at when I just spent like a school year doing it. So that kind of hits you pretty hard when you look back into, especially if you're a college student or you were a college student, about how, yeah, I mean, unless you're very, very, very lucky, then for the most part, you are not going to get your dream job once you graduate. You're going to work at a dead end job that you hate until eventually either you do work at your dream job or maybe you don't, and maybe your dreams have completely changed and you're in a different path.
Yeah, I mean, like, one thing, obviously we're going to get into a lot of, like, complaints with this show, I've got to be honest with everybody, because, the premise where we talk about is actually a really great premise, but the execution, well, let's talk about that for a second. So,
Okay.
so we can agree that the first episode was good. I think we can.
Yes, I would say that the first episode and even the second episode, where it brought us more into MIFT, I would say that those are pretty solid. Those are definitely like great foundation episodes where we not only got to see Tylor, but we also got reintroduced to Mike and Sulley. We also got to be reintroduced to Monsters, Inc. And, we got introduced to new characters that we'll be seeing throughout the course of the show. We got introduced to Val, as we mentioned before. There's also Cutter, who takes her job very seriously. And she would talk about, there's this one employee that was here and he did this and he gets caught up in that and we never saw him again. And she's definitely like the ones who like puts everything together because she's the one who actually does her job very well. And then the next character is Duncan. So Duncan Anderson, he is so determined to being a supervisor for MIFT. And he will do anything to do so, even coming across as a bit of a jerk. And then finally, we have Fritz, who is the supervisor of MIFT. And he's very kind and loyal and supportive, and he treats everybody like a family. And so we mostly spend time with these characters as opposed to Mike and Sulley. Now, we do get to see them every once in a while, especially when we get over to the end of the episodes, depending on which one, where we do get to see Mike's comedy class, where we get to see Mike training up the future jokesters so that they can be able to learn how to make kids laugh so that they can be able to power up Monsters, Inc. Yeah. And so for the most part, that is what the show is in terms of its formula. We get to introduce to the characters, we get to see a situation that happens around Monsters, Inc., and then eventually it gets resolved in the end, and then we go to Mike's comedy class. And yeah, it's pretty formulaic once you think about it.
Yeah. So, in regards to the characters, as we go along, probably we should best probably go this episode by episode, really, because, they're all, little stories, in their own way. But,
yes, and if you are interested in knowing about our full, detailed discussions about all 10 of these episodes, then check out Arun and Patricia.
Yeah. So, so obviously we get off to a good start, but then we start getting into some episodes, and let's face it, they're fillers. They
are.
You'd blink and you'd miss it. They'd be there, and then after that, if you miss it, then obviously you move on to the next one, but then you wouldn't be none the wiser. really. So, like,
Yeah, so let's talk about episode 3. So, episode 3, you would think that this will be a great episode in terms of Tylor learning the basics of how to become a good MIFT member, where there's a damaged room involving with like this little baby named Snore, and they're trying to fix the wall because one of the jokesters accidentally spewed acid on it, and they're trying to fix it. And you would think that, because that Tylor is trying to get his footing in, then maybe, as slowly as time goes on, then he'll become a proper mifter. But then in the middle of it, we have Mike and Sulley going over to a baseball game and taking care of Snore because they need to get her away from, the building and the repairing of the wall. And so I don't know, it just kind of like felt like, oh, we're gonna have Mike taking care of this baby and having no cares for it. It's kind of like the complete opposite, in which Sulley was so invested with Boo. And there's a lot of baseball jokes, and there's one monster who's like trying to cheer for the other team, and it doesn't really go anywhere in terms of the story.
Yeah, the baseball stuff I just felt wasn't relevant. Like, you could easily just say, oh yeah, Mike just goes off with the baby and then they'll come back later, and it's like the fun joke would have been like he went away and maybe like Sulley made the joke like the being like, oh, you're going to get attached to that kid if you name it, and then he goes away. We don't see him for ages. We just focus on like, the development between Tylor and Val, and then you mix in some of the other mifters, and then you'd come back and then Mike is actually like really attached to the kid now and everything like that, and so like then you just kind of play on the fact that it wasn't as easy for Mike as it was for Sulley, as he went through an entire movie of it, and they're gonna play that for laughs. But no, like there's just all this stuff with baseball, and just kind of like it wasn't really world building in that sense. It was just them going to a baseball game. And
that's not to say that you can't have any simple premises and make it work, as long as the execution is good. If the execution is good, then it doesn't matter about how simple a plot is. But there was barely anything there in terms of being entertaining or being charming or being engaging. I mean, sure, there was that one little moment where Mike was singing Snore to sleep and, singing about like, oh, I don't care about you and get to sleep and I'm not going to think about you once I, put you away. I mean, that was cute, but still, there's not really a lot of substance.
Not really, no. And, what would have been fun is, like, by the way, as of this recording, not only were we actually going through, like, episode by episode of the Monsters at Work, we were also going through a show called The Owl House at the same time.
Yes.
And so while we admit that's not a Pixar film, and why are we talking about it in PixMix, we're bringing this up for a reason. And maybe in this could be a casual chat in itself when we kind of like maybe do like Monsters at Work compared to the Owl House, maybe. I don't know. Like,
and by the way, if you guys follow me on Twitter, then every time that there was a new episode of the Owl House and the Monsters at Work around the same time, there was a lot of parallels that I had noticed that Monsters at Work did not do very well compared to the Owl House. And I'm sure that I'll bring it up when we discuss more about the episode. But yeah, I mean, I guess, some people are arguing that, yeah, well, they're two completely different shows, Arun and Patricia. One is a, episodic series that is supposed to be about characters and interactions, kind of like The Office or Parks and Recreation. While the other one is a Disney Channel animated series, and it focuses more on stories and lore and character development and all that kind of stuff. You can't compare the two, which you're right. I mean, maybe face value, you cannot compare the two, but to be quite honest, when we were both watching these shows back to back, like we would watch The Owl House first, and then we would watch Monsters at Work. And then when we just like saw Monsters at Work, and then we saw, what The Owl House was able to deliver, we just felt, wow, this is really underwhelming.
Yeah, it's just like, but at one point, babe, like, we even turned around and said, you know what, let's watch an episode of Amphibia before we watch the Monsters at Work at one point. I think you remember.
I remember there was even one time where we watched an episode that like completely drained us. I think it was the next episode we're going to be talking about, the Big Wazowskis, about the bowling episode. We'll get to that in a moment.
Yeah.
We were so bored and frustrated with it that we tuned into an episode of Gravity Falls, and like in the first minute we started laughing.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, the reason why I mean, for anyone who says it's unfair to compare these shows, well, I mean, just look at the way that they're written. I mean, like, the Owl House, Gravity Falls, Amphibia, like, they do, what I would consider basic character development. And these aren't, like, people who are, like, legendary figures in the business. They're upstarts. You know, like they're people who are just cutting their teeth in the Disney world. But you have Pixar, who basically has, from since 1996, has done classic after classic after classic of a classic. What's their excuse?
Yeah, and I even mentioned this in Arun and Patricia, and I guess I'll reiterate it here for those who have not listened to our episode discussions, that this is the first time in 20 years that they have done an animated series. And they have been doing amazing with their films, and they've done amazing with their shorts. Writing for a movie and writing for a series are completely different. When you write for a 90-minute movie, or in some cases with Pixar, in which other than Toy Story and The Incredibles, they don't do sequels. So once they write it, they don't have to worry about these characters ever again. But then when you have a TV series where you're going to tune into these characters every single week, and if they stay stagnant the way they are, it's not going to be really interesting. And then there's also the episodes. I mean, they definitely are kind of stuck around from 20 years ago, where, you have an episodic episode and then, nothing really builds from it and then you just move on. I mean, it's kind of like with, how TV was back in the day, where, you tuned in every week, you watch it, and then you wait for the next week. And this is before TiVo, this is before streaming services. This was around the time in which if you missed an episode of a TV, you had to record it on VHS so that you can be able to rewatch it again. I mean, binging was not a thing 20 years ago. And so when you watch a series on Disney Plus, where a lot of people are going to be binge watching it, and then you see the same things repeated over and over again with not a lot of progression, it kind of drags you down a bit. And I think that Pixar are a little bit behind when it comes to what is on a TV show that kids or even teenagers or young adults like us are really going to be gravitating to. Nowadays, we are immediately gravitating to character growth and development, a big story that continues to improve and engage you and even elevate over time. A massive world that has so much lore and intriguing places and even iconic moments that people immediately think back on. And, also music. Music is also really important too. But also, not to mention that it has something that you really want to go back to and watch again. For example, we're not going to watch the bowling episode or, the baseball episode ever again. Once you watch it, you're done. But with the Owl House, they have, things in the background or characters that are doing something that would be relevant later on. Or even in the last episode we talked about with the Owl House, Yesterday's Lie, where there were whispers in the in-between. And we didn't even know this until somebody posted up on Reddit. And so it gives you a reason on why you want to go back to it. Unfortunately, with Monsters at Work, that doesn't seem to be the case at all. And I think that Pixar really needs to catch up with what is acceptable nowadays. And don't even get me started on representation. Representation is massive nowadays of what people are looking forward to in an animated series. Whether it be LGBTQ representation, or whether it be neurodivergent representation, or whether it be culture representation, that is also important as well.
Yeah, it just feels like, do you get the feeling after watching this entire series that Pixar thought they were just going to do this once and they weren't going to do it again?
Yes, absolutely. When we saw in the last episode, and we'll get to this in a moment, but when we saw the last episode and the way it concluded, that's exactly what we were thinking. It's wow. I mean, if they would have just left it right there and just left it a one-season show, we would have been fine with it. But I think that that's what their intentions was just we're going to have 10 episodes and then maybe we'll just focus on the next thing. And as of the recording of this episode of PixMix, Doug Days is already out. So we already know that there are 6 shorts focusing on Doug the dog and Carl Fredricksen and Russell. So I'm taking that Pixar is doing their next things. I mean, we already know that they're going to be doing Turning Red was their next movie, and I'm sure that they wanted to do even more, series or shorts based off of their Pixar movies.
Yeah, unfortunately, babe, there is also another series that we're going to probably have to end up talking about at some point. Do you know what that is?
What's that?
Cars.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. I forgot that the Cars series was announced. Oh, God, no.
Yeah, gotta sell the toys. That's basically what you got to do. Got to sell the toys. But anyway, going back to Monsters at Work. I mean, so you have the so some of these episodes obviously are named after like famous movies. So for example, you've got the Big Wazowskis, which is obviously a play on the Big Lebowski. And then you got Little Monsters, which I think was like a reference to like I don't know, like the Little Giants or something like that, something along those lines.
No, Little Monsters is a movie that came out in the late '80s. It starred Fred Savage, and it was about meeting up with a monster that was under his bed.
Okay, then, and I'm sure Bad Hair Day is also some kind of like horror movie as well. I thought, but
Yeah.
So like obviously they do references in that, but obviously they're not as fun as like Wing It Like Witches, was obviously like Bend It Like Beckham, but that's neither here nor there. But just it's again like big Wazowskis, like the cover up, like the vending machine, the just episodes in the middle. I don't think we're ever going to come back to again.
Absolutely not. No way. Especially with episode 4. Let's get into this. So episode 4 is a bowling episode. So Tylor decides that he's going to sign the MIFT members into this bowling team so that he can be able to impress Mike to get himself one step closer to being a jokester. And then along the way, we have Gary. Oh, Gary! God! Okay.
And also, you're familiar with the comedian who actually plays this character as well.
Yes, I do. He is voiced by Gabriel Iglesias. He is one of the funniest stand-up comedians out there. If you ever see his stuff on YouTube or Netflix, and he has his own series called Mr. Iglesias, he is hilarious. He tells these amazing stories about the time that he got himself drunk at his high school reunion, and then he looked at two girls who dumped him when he wanted to take them to the prom, and then he just like drunkenly said, well, it's okay because here I am as a successful comedian, and you got fat, and everybody was just busting up laughing. And then they were like, but you're fat too. And he's like, yeah, I know, but I was like this in high school. I kept my figure. What about you? And then there was also the time where he was in Miami, where he went over to a Cuban restaurant, and he and his friend Martin, they were getting some Cuban coffee, and they gave him like this tiny small amount of espresso, and he was like looking at it, like, what, that's it? Give me all of it. Give me the whole cup. And so they gave him the whole cup. He took one sip of it, and he knew it was strong. And so the waiter was like looking at him saying like, yeah, you drink the whole thing. And so he drank the whole thing, and he was like buzzed for days. Yeah. Or don't even get me started on the racist gift basket.
It's just like, here's the thing, like, you have that, like, I mean, the only thing I can think of is that, were they paying him by the wur or something like that? Like, couldn't they, were they like, saying like, oh, hey, we've got this character, oh, it's just, let's just like make him like Wazowski, and let's just make him grey. I mean, was there not enough time to like, put in more imagination into this character? Besides, like, he's just like the anti-Wazowski.
This was their attempt, I think, of trying to give Mike a Randall character. You know how Randall was kind of like the rival and jerk to Sulley? Well, let's do it with Gary, except not make it nearly as good, and just do a palette swap of him.
It's just, I don't know. It's just, it's as far as I'm concerned, like, I mean, it's annoying. Like, they say, oh, let's just give him another Randall, when, like, in the movie they just got rid of the original Randall. Why not just like give Wazowski like someone who is like maybe not necessarily like an evil version of him, but like just better, maybe like a little bit better than him, like a Ned Flanders kind of like character.
I don't know.
It's just I just saw that, and like we just rolled our eyes, and we just thought, oh, for goodness sake, Pixar, like you couldn't have, with the comedian you were working with, you couldn't have done better.
Oh, it's such a disappointment. And this was like the first thing that I posted on Twitter when I did my comparison between Monsters at Work and the Owl House. So around the same time that Gary was introduced, we were introduced to Rain Whispers. Rain Whispers is considered to be the first non-binary character in Disney animation. And so when we got to know them, they had a close connection with Ida's past, and they also had this really shy personality, but was also very determined of standing up against Emperor Bellows. And when we saw them and Ida performing their Requiem together, oh my God, that was amazing. And we were sad when Kikimora captured Rain. And so that is a great example of introducing a new character into the series that has a past with a main character. With Gary, it's like, okay, we know that he has a beef with Mike, but How did they meet? Why did the beef start in the first place? Maybe at some point, maybe they were friends or rivals or something. But no, there's not even remotely a backstory to all of this. He's just a one-dimensional jerk.
Yeah, but then if they did that, obviously they would create another continuity error, because it's kind of like, well, hang on a second, we saw what happened in Monsters University, and it's we didn't see Gary there.
Don't even get me started on continuity errors. We'll get to that, and we'll talk about the last.
Oh, we're gonna get to that at the very end of all of this. But the big Wazowskis, even we could say with the cover up, and even with the vending machine, these are all episodes that we can just say, we just struggled through these episodes. We really did. And I'm sure, Patricia is going to, combine all our Monsters at Work, things all into one, like she did with the Owl House stuff. And, we can just show, you can just show, our optimism, starts at the very top, and then we just go into this kind of, loop, where it's kind of we're just kind of, struggling through it. And then by the time we get to the end, we're sort of, maybe, I wouldn't say satisfied, but at least we can say, yeah, we can see you're trying, Pixar, but, it's too late by now.
Yeah.
By the way, well, when we say that we became disinterested, oh my goodness, then it started to turn gross. Oh,
jeez. Oh, my God. Okay, so there's this one scene that happened around episode 9, Bad Hair Day. So in Bad Hair Day, the MIFT members are celebrating a monster named David who used to work there. And, they were talking about David used to be the best MIFTer and he used to do all of these things. And so Duncan's pet Roto accidentally ate some of David's hair when, Tylor was supposed to watch over him and make sure that he was doing okay.
But by the way, we actually haven't even got to this bit. Cutter keeps parts of monsters who have died in the factory.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So, yeah, in addition to David's hair, she also has, toenail clippings and, various things that belong to them. And then she would just talk about, yep, this was Steve. Yeah, once upon a time, he used to work with us, and then, we never saw him again. That's a major reoccurring thing with Cutter, by the way.
It's so morbid. It really is. It's don't these monsters have families of their own?
We have no idea. That's the thing. We don't know anything about them other than just them going to work.
Yeah, God forbid, babe. If I died at work and they decided to keep bits of me, wouldn't you be massively offended by that?
Yes, I would. Absolutely. If I was to come to work, to your job, maybe to collect your things, and then they had a mural of you, of your arm, saying, "Yep, that was Aaron. He used to do all of his work with this computer, and we're just keeping it as a mural to appreciate him." I'll be like, "That's disgusting. Absolutely not."
Yeah, it's should have stayed away from that printer. But it's just this that bit just kind of was just disturbing to me. But Monsters Inc. is supposed to be funny.
Yes.
Ironically, in a laugh factory, you're supposed to, one of the things we didn't do much was laugh in this show.
No, we didn't. Absolutely not. And it was perfectly apparent what we thought was the worst episode of the series, which was episode 5, The Cover-Up. So this is the episode where Fritz decides to take a vacation and Duncan is put in charge as the temporary supervisor. And we have to say, Duncan is the worst character in the series.
Yeah, he is just there's nothing redeemable about Duncan. At all.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And you would think that with him being a jerk throughout this entire time and just pushing Tylor, saying, I'm watching you, college boy. You better not take my chances of being supervisor away, college boy. I'm going to make you sign a contract saying that you will never at any point become a supervisor. It's just seriously, just stop it already. He doesn't care. He wants to be a jokester. He does not want to be a MIFT supervisor. And you would think that this episode would prove that he is so dedicated and determined to being the best supervisor possible, and then he just goes and screws it up.
Yeah, again, going back to the Owl House, we were introduced to a character called Amity Blight. right? And yeah, she was a jerk at the very beginning of this, but they had an explanation of why she was acting like a bully. Like, and even Rebecca Rose, shout out to her by the way, actually did like a whole video explaining like the whole bully character and putting that together. And even going outside of Disney, for example, like another great example of a bully character is Helga Pataki from the Nickelodeon series Hey Arnold. And like, you know, there have been so many examples of how to do like, you know, the domineering, you know, bully kind of like character in a show. And like the best bullies that you can possibly give these types of characters you can give to people is when you give them a juicy backstory to like get invested in. You know, like, you know, it's like, you know, say Duncan's like just been like himself as like, he's like dunked on his entire life, and now finally he's got this like position where he's like, you know, deputy like supervisor, and now he's trying to like, you know, grab onto it with every bit because like he like has some kind of like, you know, deal where he like if he feels like he's gonna screw it up, like he's like under like massive pressure or anything like that, he feels like he's gonna like lose it any particular day, like anything like that, like, you know, you can sort of sympathize with that. I mean, obviously his behavior doesn't become excusable because of that, but it's understandable at least. But with this Duncan character, they give us nothing. You know, like he's just a jerk for being the sake of being a jerk. It's such bad writing.
It is. And you would think that there would be like a backstory to, you know, why is Duncan so determined to being a MIFT supervisor? I mean, we even saw him like pretending to call his mom on the phone saying, "Oh, my dreams are dashed away." It's like, hey, that was a great opportunity to like build more of his character. Let's get some of that. But no, he's a character that a lot of people hated, and he stays that way. Let's compare the other episode that aired around the same time as episode 5, and that was Knock Knock Knocking on Hootie's Door. So Hootie is a character that a lot of people thought was really, really, really annoying. And you have this episode where we thought, okay, it's going to be a filler episode. We had Edith's Requiem, where it was really heavy-handed with the introduction of Rain and being captured by Kikimora. Here's something a little bit light until we go over to the next episode, which was Eclipse Lake. Boy, were we proven wrong, by the way. Hootie was able to help out Ida, King, and Luce with all of their problems, and was responsible for Ida getting control of the Harpy form, and King getting his new sonic powers, and Luce and Amity being together as a couple. So he was able to prove himself that he is not just like, oh, some one-off jokester character. No, he is crucial to the series just as much as anybody else.
It's you know, again, like, I mean, you can compare it also to, like, various other characters that we've had, like, that were similar to Duncan, but, you know, at least had understandable backstories. You know, like, but, I mean, here, again, they give us nothing. Like, you know, it's such a waste. It really is. And so we end up with a character that ends up, you know, being, you know, an enemy to Tylor, but has no real explanation for it. It kind of reminds... This is the reason why I don't like it. You know, I actually watch the classic episodes of Law and Order. Compared to, like, a Law and Order Special Victims Unit, because, like, in Law and Order, like, you know, there's reasons why, you know, people end up, like, murdering each other, or, like, you know, there's, like, oh, why a crime gets committed, something like that. There's, like, an interesting backstory of, like, you know, how it all ended up to, like, you know, this person ended up being dead, or this, like, you know, this fraud being committed, you know, like, but in Special Victims Unit, it's kind of like, you know, why did you murder this Jewish kid? And it's kind of like, why not? And it's like, well, I mean, that's gives us nothing. You know, so like,
yeah,
you know,
I know that there are psychopaths out there that just do it for the sake of it, but still, I mean, when you're talking about a TV series where you need to have motivation, it's kind of lacking when they just say, oh, just cause.
It's just unimaginative. You know, like, isn't that kind of sad for, like, this, you know, for Monsters at Work? There's a lot of, like, imagination, like, put into, like, designs and, like, concepts and things like that, but then you ask them to, like, you know, put some stuff into the characters, and there's very little to go for.
Yeah, and there's not really much to say in terms of, like, episode 6 with the vending machine. It's like, oh, you know, they have a new vending machine, and you know, because Tylor accidentally broke the old one, so yeah, nothing really much to go over. Where we had in the, you know, the episode that aired around the same time as, you know, with the Owl House, Eclipse Lake, where, hey, you know, we need to get Titan's blood so that we can be able to you know, help Luce get home, and then around the same time Emperor Bellows needs it so that he can be able to make the key, and we have Kikimora slowly going insane, and we have Amity having that amazing fight over at the knee you know, which is the same place that it was the training for Emmerich and Edric during you know, Adventures of the Elements, and we saw a lot of growth and progression there, and it's like, okay, that was incredible, but this, what was the point of this vending machine?
You know what I'm gonna do, babe? Like, I think we have the graphic like on the video, like showing like the poster of like what we're talking about. I think I'm just gonna like a duct tape like an Owl House poster, just like just next to it, and just tell everybody like, okay, like here's what we watched that was better, It's like.
Oh, we're gonna get so much hate.
We are, aren't we? But yeah, but wait, you can't blame us. Like, we were exposed to other media that's was better than this. Unfortunately, and again, like, so that's the the vending machine episode obviously isn't any better. I mean, in regards to like getting our attention to this at all, and Duncan's just a jerk as ever, and Tylor is not. We find he's not only not good at being a jokester, but not good at being a MIFTer either. And so he's getting knocked around and like not having much to it's just. I thought like at the very end of the show, I thought he was going to end up walking away from Monsters Incorporated. And he was going to go off and do something else. Monsters University.
Possibly, I don't know.
I thought he was heading that way, but that happened, and then we get adorable returns in this where
and now here's the thing. I think that this is where the series started to get its footing. I think that episodes 3, 4, 5, and 6 were just absolutely pointless. But here, I think that, okay, now we're starting to get into somewhat decent territory. So we
really
get
think
introduced...
so? Because keep in mind, the only... I'm going to just start it off with this. The only character who finally gets progression after, 6 freaking episodes, the only person who seems to get character progression is someone who was in the movie for like 3.5 minutes.
That's the only thing I'm going to give it the compliments to. At least they were able to finish off a story for a minor character that we kind of enjoyed when he was on screen. But hey, at least he was redeemed, and we knew about why in his backstory. So yes, we do get reintroduced to the abominable snowman. And so...
Or the adorable snowman, as it likes to be called.
Yeah, the adorable snowman, the agreeable snowman. So, okay, for the sake of it, we are going to call him adorable. And so Tylor, he has the chance to become a jokester. And this is during a massive heat wave. And so he accidentally gets caught into the vent where, he goes over to the banishment door and he meets up with Adorable. And so he accidentally lets Adorable out into Monsters, Inc. He's reacquainting with himself, with everybody. And we find out that he was banished around the same time that Waternoose and Randall were building the Scream Extractor. So he wasn't banished for very long. I mean, we would assume like maybe a few months or something. So then we find out that the reason why that the Adorable was trapped there was because he knew about what they were doing, and so they just put him in there. And then finally, Val was... the reason why we knew this was because Val did the research. And so then finally, Mike and Sulley decide to let Adorable into Monsters, Inc. and let him not be banished anymore. And so he's out selling snow cones. So yeah, we were able to complete a story arc for a minor character as opposed to like, I don't know, the characters that we've been focusing on for the past 6 episodes.
Yeah, like, the main characters of the show. Like, hello? Anybody in there? Like, just this... oh my! The writing process is all over the show. It really is. It's just
and again, going into another comparison with the Owl House, and I'm sorry, this is going to be the last time, I promise. So, around the same time that episode aired, Yesterday's Lie aired, and we were reintroduced to Camila. Now, Camila was a character that was unjustifiably hated by the fan base, saying, she was sending Luce over to this summer camp and she's trying to take away her creativity, but that's not true. In reality, she wanted to ground her and make her more, less of a scatterbrain because, she did have all this creativity, but she was getting in trouble with the principal. And so then we got to find out also about V, or Creepy Luce, as a lot of the fans called her, the doppelganger that we saw.
Well, if you remember, Dana said there was no such thing as Creepy Luce. So,
and that's the only thing that was correct in her statements. The whole 2 lies and a truth thing, that was crap. And we'll get to that in just a moment. But anyway, so we knew that V was not bad and Camila was not bad. They were great characters and they were able to build up from what we saw in their early episodes. And then when we finally got to see Camila taking down Jacob, the conspiracy nut curator from the Historical Society, with her chancla, and then, being really compassionate with V and being genuinely frightened that when she learned that Luce was in the boiling aisles for all those months, and then, of course, when the promise was being made. But we genuinely really were invested with Camila's character growth and progression. And we got to be introduced to V, who also has a tragic backstory of being a basilisk, being resurrected by Emperor Bello so that they can be able to find a way of, absorbing magic from the Titan. And so that intrigued us. And, sure, there were minor characters, but there were minor characters who were important to the plot. What does Adorable have anything to do with any of the MIFT members or Monsters, Inc.?
Nothing.
Nothing! Exactly! So, other than just, it was nice for this one character who was in the screen for like 3 minutes toward the end and who helped Sulley get back into Monsters, Inc. when they were banished. Yeah, that was cool that he was able to get some development, but it's inconsequential, to be quite honest.
Yeah, it's just like, and also, he just gets parked to the side, like, he doesn't become like a massive jokester or anything like that, or like, become an integral part of Monsters Incorporated. He's just selling snow cones.
Yeah, he's just selling snow cones. That is all he does.
Yeah, so we promised you, everybody, like, the outhouse did end at one point, like, it was on a hiatus, so we were basically left with Monsters at Work and left with this show all by ourselves. I feel very vulnerable right now, I just have to say. But, I think this is at the point where, things started to kind of move a little bit.
Yeah, they were actually starting to progress.
Yeah, so we finally get to Little Monsters, and so we're starting to learn that Tylor is just, flopping his auditions. Like, he's at the point where he can no longer audition anymore. Like, he's just not funny. And so he's basically left to the point where he basically has to concentrate on being a MIFTer now. And so we get introduced to the mini Monster Day, where, like, the Monster Kids get to go to Monsters Incorporated, and some of them go off with the Jokesters, so obviously, learn what they do. And then we get a bunch of kids who go with the MIFTers, and they get to see what they get to do. And so Tylor finds out that one of the kids is actually Miss Flint's daughter, who is then he comes up with this harebrained scheme to think, oh, maybe if I make the daughter laugh, maybe the daughter will somehow tell Miss Flint about how funny he is, and maybe Miss Flint will give me another chance and give me another chance. And which is like, first of all, it's really far-fetched. Like, this plan isn't going to work. And this is the thing, like, when a plan is so far-fetched and you're just not invested in it. If it was something that was possible that could potentially happen, where it's kind of like, oh, here's this situation where, Tylor's got one last chance, and if he gets this chance, he goes into like some kind of like, litigated circumstances, something like that, and somehow manages to convince Miss Flint to give him another chance, then yeah, I could probably see something more plausible there, but this is not plausible. It just isn't. Like, who in the world, like, gets a chance by, convincing their daughter at work?
Yeah.
It's just
not really much, to be quite honest. And also the fact that we see that Talia is just a massive stick in the mud. She is not even remotely amused with any of Tylor's jokes or his crazy little pranks, kind of like Miss Flint, in which she doesn't really gravitating to laughing very easily unless you're really, really funny. And so, for some reason, Tylor just has this idea of, hey, I'm going to be able to try to trick this, convince this kid to tell her mom, hey, I'm funny, give me another chance. Even though that he tried and failed 7 times.
Yeah.
And he did this every single week. So that meant that he has been doing this for 7 weeks. So for almost 2 months, Miss Flint has been seeing time and time again that Tylor is not funny.
Yeah, but the one thing I will give this episode is that at least it gives us a little thing, which is like, it says like, oh, well, Tylor may not necessarily be funny when he tries, but he is just naturally funny when he just like, he's accidentally funny, basically.
Yeah.
So he can be funny without actually knowing it. So
the only reason why he was able to get that other chance was because when Tylor accidentally slipped and fell into a donut cart and he had a whole bunch of donuts hanging around his horns, that's when the kids started laughing, and that's when he finally gets his shtick.
Yeah, so, like, but here's the thing about this, like, this is the first time we actually get an episode that actually, has consequence to the next episode. So like
Yeah, it does. And also it's also the first episode that we saw that wasn't like, oh, here's one episode and then it just completely ends. No, it actually leaves you on a cliffhanger where Talia was telling her mom, "Hey, this guy is funny." And then Mrs. Flint starts thinking about giving him another chance and the episode ends. And it's like, wow, now people are going to be invested in tuning in. What a concept.
yeah, exactly. So like there's a reason to go to the next episode. So it's like, wow, Tyler's actually going to get another chance.
Yeah. But then they completely took a major step backward with episode 9, which was the episode that we talked about earlier about David. So,
Yeah, which just kind of hypes up like the grossness and just hypes up like the craziness and just hypes up like I just do not care.
it's the second worst episode to episode 5. I'm sorry. I mean, even when we first learn about David, it's like, who cares about David? David is not even remotely relevant to the plot. And then you have them like burning donuts that Tyler was bringing in, saying like, oh, we don't bring donuts on David Day. And then they're going off and getting pretend haircuts, and then they have this mural and celebration to close out David Day by lighting candles with his hair. Oh, by the way, the hair scene. Oh my God, the hair scene. So when Roto, ate up David's hair and Tyler was trying to get it back, he tried to get a clipping of Rose's hair because it has a similar color.
We should have got him fired, by the way.
Yeah, it should have gotten him fired because that is remotely creepy. If somebody came up to me and saying, "I want a lock of your hair," I would call security.
Yeah.
And she did, by the way. She was even threatening on calling security, which is a good thing, by the way. And then Tyler just ran off. And then finally, Rose decides to give him a lock of her hair. And then the gross thing that we heard was that it was not hair from her head.
Yeah, which we could only assume it came from the nether regions. I just like this episode was just gross. Like we just yeah, and also on top of that as well, like Cutter like reveals that she's got like it's inconsequential whether they really got the hair back or not because he's got a full sack of like his hair anyway, which is just like oh well, why? What's the point of like the other episodes? I'm like, oh my God, you people are awful. Like it was just
I mean, just why? Why would you do that? Like she was talking about like, oh, David used to shed all the time, and so I have a whole bag of his hair. It's like,
why would you keep that? I get them monsters, and so like they do gross stuff, but no. It's like I get like the whole like like odorants, like they like have like like different like odorants of like smelly garbage and like wet dog and things like that. I get I get that the monster world is supposed to be like this smelly place and like it's supposed to be kind of gross and things like that. But it's like when you start introducing like somewhat human concepts and then you like going to baseball games and like doing things like that and like having like work colleagues and just like human interactions somewhat like that. And then you just throw in like, oh hey, we keep parts of people who have died. It's like, oh my freaking God. Like, It's just, jeez, stop it.
No.
It's like, it just kind of feels like it just really throws you like one way or the other. Like, do one thing or do the other. Just stick with it,
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, it's so... But then we mercifully get to the last episode, which I think probably is the best episode of the series.
It is hands down the best episode. And man, it was such a drag to finally get to this point. It's like, wow, we finally get a story that connects with the movie. We finally get a story that was a follow-up to a previous episode. We finally get a satisfying conclusion. We get character growth. We get character progression. It's like, man, I wish the entire series was like this.
Every episode of that show should have been like episode 10. Like,
yes.
Yeah. And so it's just on top of that as well, like it says the whole even the episode's called "It's Laughter We're After," which is like the saying that Tyler came up with at the very beginning of the series.
Yes.
Like, I'm just really surprised that it took them this long to finally tie everything together.
Yeah, and that scene that was so nice and genuine was when Tyler was just seeing that everything is changing around with Monsters, Inc. and everybody was focusing on laughter. And then Sulley comes out and, tells him about that, finally Tyler has the opportunity to become a jokester in training. And he's like contemplating about whether he should be a jokester or whether he should stay in MIFT. And so then Tyler tells him, I wish that we can go back to scaring. And then that's when, for the first time in the entire series, we get a callback to the discussion of Boo.
Which is everyone's kind of like asking, like, for like since 2001, like, like a mention of Boo, like what is she doing, where is she going? Now we finally get that. Like it's the one character that people are really calling after to see again.
Yes, and also it ties up really nicely with the movie because Tylor was the one who came up with the ideas of the large canisters that we saw at the end of the movie when Mike was doing his comedic skit. And then when we find out that the scene that happened at the end literally is happening in the last episode of this series, and it's like a day later when in reality it took them a whole year for this to happen.
Yeah, it's like, but so there's a continuity error straight into that. Like, I guarantee you, I don't think they care anymore. I don't think. Like, I think they've just stopped caring. I think, like, I think they realize,
okay,
like,
if there is not an episode where Sulley goes to see Boo in season 2, I'm gonna be really disappointed.
Yeah, like, they have to go there now. And by the way, that's another thing as well. Like, we've gone through season 1, and would you want to see a second season of this?
Seriously? Like I said, if they would have ended the series in episode 10, I would have been fine with it. I would have been completely satisfied with it, saying, okay, Tylor is a jokester, he got what he wanted, Val is his assistant, and now they're going to focus on laugh power. If they would have ended it right there, I would have been fine with it. I would have been like, yeah, the show is very flawed and half of the episodes are pointless, but hey, it ended on a great note. But I guess, and we mentioned this on Arun and Patricia, but Monsters at Work has been one of the most watched series on Disney+.
But why is that, though? When you really think about it.
I mean, I guess maybe for like, here's the thing. I've been seeing a lot of people on social media. A lot of people actually like this show.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying they don't like the show, but, I mean, is it more than the fact that basically it's Monsters, Inc. as, like, the intellectual property? Like, if this was just, like, a generic, like, this is just a generic factory with, like, Pixar characters in it, like, that have been played off Universal Man, like, would we have cared about this show?
It was pulled off well? Yes.
Well,
but
unfortunately, it's not.
The execution that we saw? No.
No. It's like, I think many people just like it because it's Monsters, Inc. I think, and that I mean, people are up for, like, in the comment section, I'll happily take the abuse, if you want, but, as far as I'm concerned, like, I think if this wasn't Monsters, Inc., I think if this was, like, some other thing that Pixar was, like, doing, like, a whole new, a show, I highly doubt that, it would be, I highly doubt we'd be talking about this for much longer. If kind of like, oh wait, remember when Pixar did this TV series and it wasn't as great as it was? I think the fact that it's because it's Monsters Incorporated, I think that's what's basically bringing people in. I think.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah. So, but unfortunately, everybody, like, here's the thing about this, like, we're not hating this on purpose. Like, we like Monsters, Inc. Monsters, Inc. is, yeah, like, it was what, and also, you guys voted it to, like, be in our top 5, like, best Pixar films, and we agreed. Like, Monsters, Inc. is a great Pixar film. It really is. Like, we urge everybody to go watch it. And so, but unfortunately, Monsters at Work, it just doesn't live up to it. Like, it's I mean, the characters that we really couldn't get related with. I mean, with Tylor, we could get related to till the very end. Like, I mean, and also, I mean, some of the music, actually, besides, Mike's, one about, hilariously saying he doesn't care about the kid. I mean, like, besides that, like, was there any other musical numbers that were in the show that we actually, also, on top of that as well, any of the skits that we can actually remember outside of, like, that ones are like, the beginning or the very end of the show, the series. Like, anything else in between that we do care about.
Yeah, I mean, even the song that Mike sung in the very first episode, where he was showing off, what does it mean to be funny? I thought that was a really good song. I mean, that's just Billy Crystal being amazing as always. But other than that, when it comes to, like, music, I mean, nothing about the music really stood out to me, other than just Mike singing and Billy Crystal being an amazing singer as always, and Mike being the charismatic character that we knew about from both movies and even with this show. It's like, yeah, I mean, it was nice to hear John Goodman and Billy Crystal reprising their roles again. I mean, they fit to it really, really well. And whenever that they do have chemistry together, they're great.
Yeah.
But
I just wonder about, like, I mean, I was looking at some of the other characters. How interesting would it have been if, like, we had, like, a switch, like, halfway through, like, not halfway through the show, but, like, somewhere through the show where, like, Duncan is, like, this, this not likable character, and, like, he's trying to work his way up to the top, but there's a reason why he's doing it, and that's because, Fritz, like, there was one character he was reminding me of a little bit, which, made me feel a bit uncomfortable with, and you know who that was?
Who was that?
Funzo from Toy Story 3.
Oh, you mean Lotso?
Lotso, sorry, yeah, Lotso. I don't know why I keep calling him. I always call him Funzo. I don't know why I keep calling him that, but
I mean, maybe he's called Funzo in another country. I don't know. But yeah, Lotso. Yeah, Lotso was a great character because he was really nice, but he had this inner dark side to him because of his past, and his thirst for power just built up over time. If we had a reverse where Duncan was just this really bitter jerk to everybody, but we got to know why he was a bitter jerk, and then slowly he becomes genuinely nice and caring about MIFT, then I would love to have seen that.
Yeah, but then, like, he'd say, oh, well, the reason why I'm like this, like, Fritz is not a nice guy to work for, and like, he seems nice at the beginning, but like, eventually he starts turning, and then, it's like Duncan starts becoming like, maybe like an anti-hero or something like that, he may not necessarily be someone who grows on you, but at least, you can say, oh, hey, he was right about this. It would have been interesting if you had something like that. Maybe even then, it would have been interesting if we had, say, for example, I'm trying to think of another scenario we could basically. Remember when we thought that Fritz was going to retire? And he was gonna go halfway through the show, and maybe then he would have given Duncan the ability to actually become the supervisor and give him some development. We
were really thinking that was going to happen. So, as you guys know from the other episode we just talked about just a moment ago, that there was a threat of, whittling down Monsters, Inc. because they weren't generating enough power. And so, while Mike is trying to spend money on a lot of unnecessary crap to build up morale, like paintings and a revamped, break room. We had Fritz, who was, hearing about all of this happening, and so he said, "I'm going to retire, and I'm going to, leave Monsters, Inc." And so we thought, hey, this will be a great opportunity for Duncan to finally grow as a character and become a proper supervisor. And then it was completely ruined because we saw in a season prior to this, a scene prior to this that they actually did get the money and the boost that they needed so that they can be able to stay afloat. Let's just say that scene didn't happen. And then we definitely got to see Fritz saying, I'm going to retire, I'm going to leave Duncan as charge, guys, the best of luck. And then, we see Duncan slowly progressing as a good supervisor, kind of like how we've been seeing Tylor slowly progressing as a good MIFT member. So yeah, I think that would have been great if we would have let Fritz go.
Yeah. But, I mean, the way we've left it is that Tylor finally got his dream and became a jokester. And to be honest with you, I don't know, I don't know how to feel about that ending, to be honest with you. I don't know whether it's, it's nice that he finally got to be a jokester and he finally got to get where he is by being, just naturally being him. That's sort of a good message to say, hey, don't pretend to, be this other person that you feel like you have to be. Just be yourself. And you'll get where you need to be. That's sort of a nice message to leave off. I mean, it's not always true, but at least it's a nice message, at least for the show, to say to people, at least. But,
and also the great message is, continue to work hard and continue to learn everything that you have around your work, and eventually you'll get your dream job.
Yeah.
And that's a great message for college students.
Yeah, but mind you, unfortunately, we already got that episode. We kind of got that message already in Monsters University. So, it was all played out in a montage at the very end of the movie. So, oh well. But, I guess we can lead into Season 2 and give our prediction of basically what can happen. So, we got Tylor now as a jokester, and now Val's transferred over to be his assistant with the doors. And so, I guess now that, I don't know whether we're going to be staying with Tylor, or if we're going to be getting introduced to another monster, or if we're going to, whatever else is going to happen in Monsters at Work. Where do you think it's going to go?
Well, I hope if they are going to focus on Tylor, then definitely I would like to see him continuing to progress as a jokester, and maybe something massive happens with Monsters, Inc. Maybe, hey, because of the continuity error that this happened, after the end of the movie, maybe we get to see Boo again. Maybe she'll be a part of the show, or maybe, something involving with like another kid would happen. Or if they're going to take the Infinity Train route, in which they're going to focus on a different character every season, let's see if maybe we can focus on another monster from another department. Like maybe we get to focus on Miss Flint or somebody from, who's trying to recruit jokesters. Or maybe we get to spend more time with Mike and Sulley. Or maybe we get to focus on somebody else from another, section of Monsters Inc. Or hey, I mean, maybe we get to focus on something else that's not related to Monstropolis or even with Monsters Inc. Like we were like throughout the series, we were talking about how there was this other company called Fearco that was still scaring people. I mean, and so hey, maybe we can focus on the monsters from Fearco and then hearing about Monsters Inc. and how they're treating people into laughter as opposed to scaring. And maybe one of the monsters, maybe he slowly comes from Fearco and goes to Monsters Inc. Or maybe we get to see somebody from Fearco and trying to be the best scarer, and then maybe find out maybe scaring is wrong or something. I don't know, but yeah, I think that if they are going to do a season 2, they really need to elevate everything about the show. Like they need to focus a lot more on story development. They need to focus a lot more on character growth. They need to focus a lot more on building their lore and their worlds, because Monstropolis is so huge, you can be able to tell any kind of story. And yeah, they just really need to revamp everything. The things that they did for episodes 1, 2, and 10, do that. Make every episode like episode 10, because at least it was interesting.
So, I mean, like, one thing they could do is that I've got an interesting idea. So, let's say someone goes through a door and it's actually like a kid in a circus who, like, or he's already a clown, but he already kind of knows about laughter anyway. So, like, he doesn't necessarily like, or maybe he probably isn't very good at it himself, and maybe he falls into the monster world and he just says, "Oh, hey, can you teach me to be funny?" And I'll maybe they like have some kind of trade-off or something like that. Have like the first human who actually works at Monsters Incorporated.
Yeah, finally we get to have humans and monsters interact.
Yeah, so that's one way they could progress it. I mean, unfortunately, the one thing I fear is that once again, like the season 2 could once again just be full of filler episodes. Like Tylor ends up with an apprentice, and like that apprentice is useless, and like Tylor has to like be that that kind of like that big figure for him to like help him progress into the job and things like that. Or
maybe Tylor will be the one teaching the comedy classes, because maybe Mike sees a lot of potential with Tylor, and so we'll be seeing doing a lot.
Yeah, I mean, potentially, yeah. So, but I mean, as far as I'm aware, I'm very, very. I mean, obviously, it's because of the fan reaction and because like everyone on watching on Disney Plus that Monsters at Work has got a second season. But I got to be honest with you, would we be covering it episode by episode the next time around? I don't think so.
No, I'm sorry, everybody. We're not going to do episode by episode discussions like we've been doing for Arun and Patricia. I mean, when all the episodes come out, we will discuss about it in PixMix, but yeah, we're not doing that again. I'm sorry.
They gotta go to the team that did all these other shows that we've been talking about, that we've been spoiled with really before we came to Monsters at Work, and say to them, hey, how would you do this? And then just get pointers from them, and then have a show where you have characters progressing from episode to episode, where and give them a reason to tune into the next episode, and not make it feel like it's gonna be a chore.
Yeah. And if you are going to introduce new characters, then make them interesting or make them relevant to the plot. And I know what you're going to say, but, it's supposed to be like a fun, character building series, kind of like The Office or Parks and Recreation. But you see, the difference between those shows is that they actually had chemistry. They actually worked well together. Why do you think people remember characters such as Dwight or Nick Offerman? Because they were interesting, they were weird, they were quirky, and they just fit so well with all the other characters in the show. And so I think that if they are going to go into that direction, then sure, let's see that happen. Let's be able to see them be able to play around with them being quirky or weird or awkward or anything like that. And just like with real jobs, it's kind of like with the first episode where we were introduced to Banana Bread, where he left and he went off to do something else. It's like we didn't get anything like that again, other than the last episode where Tylor becomes a jokester. But yeah, I mean, employees come and go, and then new people start coming in. So yeah, I mean, make it feel like it's a real job with real people and going through real work situations.
Yeah, it's as far as I'm concerned, like, I mean, after doing this, like, I like to say to Pixar, okay, this was a good, like, a first try. Like, now that we've, like, had this first try, let's try something else. Like, you know what I really love to see of a TV series right now?
What's that?
Of The Incredibles.
Yes, absolutely. I would love to see that. I'm sure that if we weren't getting a second season of Monsters at Work, then I would have loved to have seen The Incredibles have their own series. The adventures of Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl and, Dash and Violet saving the city or, traveling around and saving the world, kind of like Johnny Quest or something like that. But yeah, absolutely. Like, The Incredibles deserve to have an animated series.
Yeah, like, like, even if it is, like, not focused on superheroes, like, as The Incredibles wasn't necessarily, like, massively focused on. It was focused, like, on, like, family and, like, Big Bob obviously going for, like, his crises and things like that in the original. And then, obviously, in the other one, then it was, like, focusing on getting the supers back. I mean, like, for the third one, I mean, like, for the continuation of the series, or even then, like, maybe you could even do, like, a show where, even before, like, it's a prequel to, like, The Incredibles. Like, you can show them, like, what they were like, back in the day. Like...
Yeah, or maybe you can... how there were other heroes that were focused on in Incredibles 2? Maybe focus on them. Maybe, finally with the ban being lifted, now we get to see superheroes again. Maybe we can have, like, maybe some episodes with, like, regular people just hating the fact that superheroes are around because they're causing destruction and, more problems are happening. Like, maybe we have some people who are for superheroes and some people who are against superheroes. Or, like you said before, we have a prequel series with Mr. Incredible and with Frozone and Elastigirl saving the world. And maybe we get to be introduced to other superheroes that we only knew about from, like, the flashbacks, like Gazer Beam or something. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of possibilities with The Incredibles.
Yeah, well, let's hope it's going to be nothing like Mr. Incredible and Pals, with Mr. Skipper.
You know what? If there was something like Mr. Incredible and Pals, I think that would be fun. Kind of like a series of shorts. I to be quite honest, I really enjoyed Mr. Incredible and Pals. I just like the fact that it was like a parody of, like, those old 50s and 60s cartoons that kids used to watch and that were heavily censored and limited with animation. I found those to be incredibly funny and charming.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you get Samuel L. Jackson to, like, commentate over them as well, I think. And
yes, please. That would be so good.
Yeah, but unfortunately, everybody, until we get over the other ones, I don't think we're going to see those anytime soon, unfortunately. So
this was, I was so disappointed with Monsters at Work. When we first read about the news report in Arun and Patricia, we were excited for it. We were like, hey, this is an opportunity to introduce new characters into the world of Monsters, Inc. and somebody who is going through a real situation, something that we went through when we were graduating from college. But man, the execution was just really shaky. Half of the episodes are pointless, and some of the characters didn't get really a lot of development, or some of them were just flat out annoying. And it only just started getting good, like, towards the end. And yeah, if you do like this show, good for you. You found something in it that Aaron and I.
Here's the thing about this: there's a lot of people who do like this show, and, like, kudos to you if you do. But I mean, I'm thinking that the consensus seems to be that, oh, hey, Monsters Inc. is back. And I think maybe they're holding out for the fact. And this is the thing that Pixar should have done, like, a long time ago. They should have just done a sequel. Like, they should have just done Monsters Inc. 2. Like, and, like, show us, like, what happened, like, when, now that laughs are in business, and, like, hey, what happened to Boo in the, when she's older and things like that. Like, they should have just done that.
Yeah, like, and I know that they were really close to doing it around 2007.
Remember when that fake poster came out and, like, it was Boo, and, like, we made a joke about it on PixMix, like, yeah, like, everybody was, like, jumping up and down for that, but, like, it just goes to show that the fans know what they want. And it's just a shame that Pixar just seems to either take a lot of time, getting to that point. Like, it took ages to get an incredible sequel. Like...
Yeah, it took almost 14 years.
Exactly. Like, how long is it going to be until we get a Monsters Inc. sequel? Like, not to say that we not got one with Monsters at Work, but even then, like, let's just bring out a movie, please.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Pixar does seem to take their time when it comes to, like, continuing things, don't they? Unless it's Toy Story. Like, it took them 20 years to do another animated series, unlike DreamWorks, in which every time that there's a movie, they seem to just pump out an animated series every second. And it took 14 years to get an incredible sequel. And yeah, I mean, I know that, like the Shigeru Miyamoto quote, a delayed game is eventually good, but a rushed game is forever bad. I get it. And, things, when you take their time to craft it the best way that you can, it will turn out to be wonderful at the end. I mean, everybody's singing the praises of Psychonauts 2, but then you have cases in which when you have been waiting for something for so long and then it turns out to be a bit of a disappointment, especially if it was something that you didn't exactly want, it becomes a letdown.
Yeah. So, shall we give this show a score?
Oh, man. Oh, geez. I'm going to give it a 5. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10 because it starts off pretty good. And then, like, towards the middle, it's really, really rough. Then when it gets toward the end, it starts picking itself up a little bit. And some of the characters, they are really enjoyable at first, but because it's kind of stagnant with the same thing over and over again, it just feels kind of middling. And also, the stuff with Mike and Sulley, there just wasn't enough of it. And, there were some genuinely funny moments in there, and there were some genuinely good song moments with Mike, and also the ending was a great way to close things off. So I think that there is room for improvement if they decide that they were going to continue the story of Tylor for a season 2. So it's not the worst thing that we've ever seen. It's just genuinely disappointing. It's kind of like how I feel about Brave, in which I was excited about that movie because I've been hearing about it for years, and then there was a lot of issues that happened behind the scenes, and then it turned out to be something that kind of like wasn't into my expectations, and then it just kind of left me underwhelmed and disappointed. I kind of feel that way, but I do see that there was a lot of work and passion put into this. I saw that there was a lot of effort into the animation because, they could have easily done it in 2D again. Doing 3D work is pretty expensive and very time consuming. So I see that they did genuinely put in a lot of work. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt because, like I said before, Pixar have just started doing animated series for the first time in 20 years, and they've been hitting it out of the park with their movies and with their shorts. And so they're just starting to now get back into doing animated series again and learning that things have drastically changed from 20 years ago. So yeah, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10, middle of the road. Not the worst thing I've ever seen, not the best thing that I've ever seen, but definitely just underwhelming and disappointing.
Yeah. Mind you, I would echo all of that, but however, when it did, get good moments, it did give us good moments, I will give it that, but obviously then it would drag it down with, some of the stuff in the middle. It's kind of like a half-baked pie. It's kind of like a half-baked pie. It's cooked around the edges but cold in the middle. I think it's probably the best way to describe it. But, I wouldn't go as far to give it a 5. Maybe I'll give it a 6. I'll say.
Okay.
So because there's something to be invested in in the first 2 episodes of the show, and then when we finally get to I would say between episodes 8, 9, and 10, finally we've got some development going on. So there is something there, and so I'll give it a 6, and I'll say that let's see where we get to when we finally get to season 2. And let's see if my 6 is still worth my 6 when we finally get to the second season. So.
Okay, then. That's fair.
Okay. All right, everybody. Well, I know if you tuned into this episode and was kind of disappointed at the fact that, we weren't going to give this, a massive amount of praise, keep this in mind, we're two old grumps, who have, been subjected to, so much animation over the years, and so we know what we like and we hate what we hate. And so, if you enjoyed this show, then great, but unfortunately for us, since for the last 20 years, we've just been asking, why don't they just do a sequel to Monsters Incorporated? And then we finally got Monsters University, which was a prequel. It's okay, we can see what happens here, and then it turned out to be mediocre and then wreck the continuity of the previous movie. And now we got Monsters Awoke. It's kind of okay, we can try and get invested into this, and we just haven't. We've been saying to Pixar for probably the good space now of 20 years, just make a sequel and just do that, so all right, well, thanks everyone for checking in PixMix. I think the next thing we're going to be talking about is probably Doug Days. I think next.
Yeah, we're going to be doing Doug Days next, and this will not be as long as our discussion with Monsters at Work because there are only 6 episodes and they're shorts, so this will be going a lot quicker, and it'll be one of Ed Asner's last roles since he recently passed away.
Yeah. All right then, but until then, my name is Aaron.
My name is Patricia.
Take care, and bye-bye for now.
See you later.